A lot of people think wealth is money-based, when in reality, wealth is contentment-based. That's the second thing I always tell people. It's like, being rich, that's based on assets. Yeah, if you want to be rich, you're going to have a certain asset value that is constantly moving. That number for everyone changes. Once someone gets to 500,000 in assets, they need $1 million. And once they get to $1 million, they need $3 million. Once they get to $3 million, well, it just keeps going. They start keeping score long after they're secure asset-wise. Wealth allows you to be contented and not necessarily satisfied, but content is this deep word that means that we appreciate and are so grateful for what we do have that even if all we had was what we had, we're good with it.
Everyone has a sock drawer where we hide the stuff we don't want to face. Today, we're opening yours. I'm Lisa Begley, and this is the Sock Drawer Podcast. If your life feels messy, stuck, or outgrown, good. That's where we begin.
Money is one of the most, I would say, emotional topics that we avoid talking about, yet it quietly controls many of our decisions, relationships, and even our sense of worth. Today's guest believes that real issue isn't money itself, but what we worship through it. J.R. Wheeler is a financial professional, author, speaker, and cancer survivor who sits at the intersection of faith, finance, and personal responsibility. His work challenges people to rethink not just how they manage money, but how they relate to it. This conversation, it isn't about getting rich quick. It's about clarity, stewardship, and confronting the stories we've been told about success. J.R., thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you have said before the business, you've said surviving cancer stripped away ego and clarified purpose. So what did that season teach you about control, and especially the financial control?
Absolutely. And so when you get diagnosis, it's always an interesting scenario to see how you respond. For me, the reality of that was that prior to, I'd been a successful entrepreneur, I'd had multiple businesses, and I'd done all these things. And I'd been taught by many of my mentors, just like take it by the horns and just run,
Yeah.
And when you get a diagnosis like that, it very quickly shows you mortality and facing the end, which very many of us don't get a chance to do until the end. But it also shows the reality of this world, which is like sometimes things happen that are completely out of your control, and there's nothing you can really do about it except for take one more step, and it focuses you in really, really tight.
I bet. Oh my gosh. That had to be just a shock at that point. But before we dive a little bit more into that, Simplify Enterprises, before that, before the book, who were you before the cancer diagnosis? Who were you before money became a calling and not just a tool?
Absolutely. No, prior to Simplify Enterprises has always been, our heart was personal, professional, and financial development. Before cancer, before all that though, my heart has always been to help people. I've been on a journey to help 1 million people, personally, professionally, financially, since as long as I can remember. Haven't hit that number yet, but hey, maybe one day, Lord willing. And so the whole process up to this point has been kind of a culmination of multiple businesses, whether that be sales at different companies, 1099 opportunities, starting various different, I'll say companies based on my own wants and needs and desires. But what I found at my core is that it was all ego driven. I wanted the nice car. I wanted the nice house. I wanted the 2.5 kids. I wanted the perfect looking marriage. I wanted all these things to be perfect. And so the reality of walking into that and being humbled time and time again throughout the process has always been something that's been understatedly powerful and actually empowering if you just embrace the catalyst that is, challenge. And so I talk about cancer being an ego destroyer. It's really easy with all the different stories I could tell you about that. I get into it a lot. In general, it's like, we are too I-driven and not enough we-driven, I think, as business owners, and the reality of like what it looks like to actually run something substantially bigger and more than we could ever hope, dream, or imagine.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on the I versus the we. And when did you imagine? I don't just want to help people make money, right? Because it sounds obviously you had a more powerful purpose. I want to help them understand what money is doing to them. Can you dig into that statement a little bit? I'd love to know a little bit more of your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the financial industry, we're constantly told to pursue people with money, but I didn't really grow up wealthy, so I didn't have the normal, I'll say network that many financial professionals do, and that they're looking to help very specific people with very specific problems and very specific products. For me, I kept asking why. I was like, why is this person in this situation? Why is this happening? Why do I keep seeing this kind of cycle of like getting ahead, getting behind, getting ahead, getting behind, something happens and bad things happen to good people. But in the long run, it's like, why is this happening? And the reality is that we make a lot of decisions every single day, small and big, that add up in major ways. And what I found is that most people, they're wanting to do the right thing, but none of us are ever really taught anything about money growing up. We're not really
How
empowered
to do it. Yeah.
The how isn't there. The why makes sense to us. Like, we need to be able to stop working one day. We need to save and invest. We need to do these things. But the what is even there. There's plenty of people talking about what to do, but how to do it becomes really convoluted when some people, they're held back by the idea of success in and of itself. What would it be like? And I invite my clients to ask themselves this all the time. What would it be like to be the most financially free friend or family member that you have? What would that actually look like and feel like? Or what would it feel like to be that rich person that you've been saying was absolutely terrible your whole life? You know, it's like success guilt is equally as damaging as sometimes self-deprecation or some of the other side of it is. And so we never really ask, why are we sacrificing, or what is it really going to be worth, until, you know, we're many years older and have many more battle scars and we don't know why it was worth it or if it was worth it. So
that is really, so true.
Really hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And it's such a culture shift, I think, from, you know, how we grew up and, you know, what we were taught. And I've had this conversation numerous times too, is like, I feel like we've lost some of the teachings in just school, you know, like teaching our kids how to think about money. Now, one of the things I noticed is you talk very openly about worship in a financial context. So that word can feel maybe a little uncomfortable in the business spaces. Why use it so intentionally?
Oh my gosh. So I think I talked about this briefly a moment ago. It's like, we're taught to literally worship and idolize business leaders, companies, all these things coming up. It's like, just do what they did and you'll have the results that they did. And this leads to an idolatry that a lot of people just vastly underestimate. When I look at people's businesses, you know, it's like, why are you not saving any money? It's like, because the business, they're just literally sacrificing their life, their health, their families on the altar of business. And it was heartbreaking to realize that, you know, it happened to me. You know, I looked up and I was like, man, my relationship with my wife isn't as good as it should be. My godson who lives with us, I'm not being the father figure he needs. And so you look up and you go, it's so natural to put 110% effort into something and not realize that sacrifice and worship go hand in hand. But who's out there that would have said to little 20-year-old entrepreneur getting started, JR, hey man, maybe you shouldn't work 110 hours this week. Maybe you should develop some time where you can actually be peaceful and be able to reflect on what's going on and take a 1,000-foot view from your business, as opposed to being so busy working in your business that you're never able to step out and work on your business honestly. And that's a transition that ties in very closely to that worship, because worship and sacrifice, for as long as it's been a concept, has always gone hand in hand. And so you got to be careful with, when you're sacrificing, going, what the heck am I sacrificing for? And what am I sacrificing to? And these are really deep, deep questions.
That is I love that. And that explanation is great. And as you were saying it, it rang true for me right back to where my husband and I bought, in my mind, we bought a fitness studio, and you know, that was being an entrepreneur. There's so many misconceptions, I think, about what that can look like, and that it doesn't have to look like, you know, owning a specific, you know, brick and mortar business and only doing this. And that's exactly what happened, is I almost put myself into the hospital. I was on medications when I had never been. So I absolutely can really align with what you're saying. You know, what among that, like it was a lie I told myself, in your experience, what are the most common lies that people believe about money and success?
Oh, dang. If I was to sum it up in 3, you know, people, I'll give you an analogy that I heard early on in my career. It's that people are spending money on things they don't need to impress people they don't like for reasons they don't understand. And that's what the heart of if I was to take 3, it's like, the people around you hopefully aren't there just for the money. Early in my career, I was a 20-year-old. Post 2008, I was making great money, and everyone wanted to know what this little 20-something-year-old was doing to make six figures.
Yeah, I bet.
And so my story sold, and I was surrounded by all these people. My mom said I was living a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget, And, silly things. Like, I wasn't even thinking about, like, going 30 people deep to Taco Cabana at 1 a.m. because let's go have some fun. Let's go have a good time at even a little fast food restaurant and paying for everybody.
Yeah.
And then, I get my 1099 at the end of the year. My mom's trying to help me with my taxes. And she's like, looking at my 1099, looking at my bank statements, like, where's the money? And I was like, I don't know. As I busted out a brand new BlackBerry because everyone needed BlackBerries, right?
Right.
And so it's like, the money isn't everything. It just ranks up there with oxygen for most people. So that's the first lie, is that money isn't everything. We think it is. Like, we think time is money. Time really isn't money either. Anyone who's scaled understands that dichotomy shifts very, very quickly when you can leverage the efforts of others. So time isn't really money, but time is just money is just a resource. And, something I found personally in my exploration is that, God's the source, everything else is a resource. And so in that, if you can align that eliminates most of the lies that money tells you. So you need money to have good friends. No. You need money to experience the nicest things. No. A lot of people think wealth is money-based, when in reality, wealth is contentment-based. That's the second thing I always tell people. It's like, being rich, that's based on assets. Yeah. If you want to be rich, you're going to have a certain asset value that is constantly moving. That number for everyone changes. Once someone gets to 500,000 in assets, they need $1 million. And once they get to $1 million, they need $3 million. Once they get to $3 million, well, it just keeps going. They start keeping score long after they're secure asset wise. Wealth allows you to be contented and not necessarily satisfied, but content is this deep word that means that we appreciate and are so grateful for what we do have, that even if all we had was what we had, we're good with it. And so that second thing, that wealth is actually not based on your assets, but based on what you're doing with what you have right now and your current surplus. And so if you can't be contented where you're at, it's not going to get better as you get more. More is not the answer. I guess that would be the third one, is that you go on, it's like, you're constantly chasing, but there's always something new. There's always something else when you're so satisfied in the world. It's like one of my very first clients that I dealt with that was a super high income individual. He's making $500,000 a year, but he had saved less that year than one of my couples that was making $40,000 a year.
Wow.
How is that? And I'm like, it's lifestyle creep, it's pride, it's ego, it's vanity. It's the idea of wanting to look good as opposed to actually being good.
Yeah.
Many of us are living on the float just to impress people for reasons we haven't really explored. And it's like, we got to let that go. We got to focus on what we can. And so that's a deep way of kind of answering that heart posture of like buying things we don't need to impress people we don't like for reasons we don't understand. It's like, there's a lot of depth to that.
JR, so good. I love that whole wealth is contentment. That is I feel like an iconic statement that everybody needs to understand and maybe sort of live up to, How would you say you help clients who look successful on paper? And we kind of maybe touched on this a little bit, but they feel stressed, they're scattered, or they're spiritually disconnected. What do you offer? What do you do to help them?
That's such a good question. And that's the thing. People think that those folks are just like, because they have good incomes and good money, congratulations. Yeah. All the peace just flows. No. More money, more problems, as the great poet
the tune
said,
goes.
Right? Yeah.
One of my favorites.
So my coaching has always been realizing and being really honest about one fundamental truth, is that I'm the problem. Yeah. I've always been able to make great money. And as someone who many entrepreneurs are phenomenally talented value creators, which means that money flows their way. And so a lot of the problems that many people struggle with financially, especially in the W-2 world, is that, my income's so fixed. But in entrepreneurship, we can just sell more product. We can just go out there and hustle and grind and make it happen. Yeah. And so we're getting this really bad habit of self-reliance. But the other side of the coin is true, which is I'm my biggest problem when it comes to finances. I can spend money with the best of them. So what do I need to do to protect the money from me, the fallible part of the equation? Because I don't know about you, Lisa, but
what do we need to do?
Oh my God, it doesn't just go out and spend itself. It doesn't save itself either. It just sits there. It does nothing without us. And so we have to create systems and protocols that protect the money from us and create some separation. You know, I had a client that poured into me. It's ironic. The client poured into me on this. They were very wealthy, just getting started in my career. And I was like, why do you have so many banks? Not bank accounts, like banks. They're like, well, if I can see all my money in one place, I'm going to spend it. And I was like, that blew my mind.
That is
I was
an
like, wait,
epiphany.
you don't just have multiple bank accounts at one bank. You have multiple banks. And they're like, yeah, that bank's for spending. That bank's for savings. That's bank's for, you know, the random little car note, you know, whatever it may be. And it's like, they spread it out so well. And so efficiency is something I work with my clients on, especially as they're starting out, is getting multiple banking relationships set up so they can create purpose-driven separation. And people think that separation is going to create, you know, problems, but what it does is creates freedom of expression. It's like have an account that's just for bills. Have an account that's just a bank that's just for bills, a bank that's just for savings. Have a bank that's just for spending that you can get a lot of value out of. Now, some people take that to the extreme and try to play the points games and credit cards. And I'm not a fan of doing that on your personal side so much as the business side. But the idea is that, you know, separation creates freedom. And when you know exactly how much you're allowed to spend guilt-free, it's actually really empowering. And so setting that up is a big thing. It's like, imagine, you know, whatever the thing you love. I always say this to clients. I said one to a meeting before this, which was, I want you spending more on the things you care about and less on the things that you don't. And too many people are spending a ton of money on stuff they don't really care about. So let's create some intentionality in your spending so that way you spend more on the things you care about, less on the things that you don't.
Yeah.
And then we can be really intentional on savings where it's like, okay, you know, you're a young entrepreneur, you're in your 20s, you're just starting to make a little bit of money. Why aren't you saving for your wedding? Who says that your parents are going to pay for it? Who says that they're going to pay for the honeymoon? Like, go ahead and hedge that bet. And then if you're good, great. You have extra money in the system. And then having a plan for what extra money looks like. You know, it's tax time right now. Most entrepreneurs have to pay in. But those of us who have scaled our business to where our business is paying us a salary, well, now we might get a tax refund. What do you do with your tax refund? Do you blow it? I always talk about the big three. It's like you got to save, you got to take care of any debts that you may have accumulated, and then lifestyle. You got to live today. And so having intentionality in all things is really where it starts. So congratulations on having your high income. Well, now let's talk about protecting that income from you so we can actually do what it can do.
Yeah, from you.
Yeah.
What do you say to, so JR, this is interesting to me. So, you know, there's conflicting, you know, ideas out there about money and saving and wealth and all of this. What do you say to the idea of, I should call it that, the idea of like, pay yourself first?
In my belief system, I pay myself second.
Okay.
In general. But the second I'm paying is actually most of my structure for like that bills account is going to go. First is going to be tithes and offerings, usually just a tithe portion on whatever my base salary is. I can talk more about that later. Then future you. Future you gets paid first, quote unquote, after that, due to the whole nature of if you don't pay it first, you end up not paying it at all.
Right.
Nothing left over for future you. But future you is the you that's like, much older, can't hustle and grind like we can today, and they're hungry. I always ask clients, I go, how much does future you have right now? And they're like, 15,000 in an old IRA. I'm like, how long is that going to last for future you? They're like 1,500 pizzas maybe. I don't know, like whatever it is, not very long.
Yeah.
And so
I
always say, hey, future you's hungry. Make sure they're getting paid like a bill. You know, down here in Texas, the gas bill is called Atmos. And so it's like, you don't call up Atmos and go, hey man, I know I paid you $300 last month. I'm going to need some of that back. Future you is taken care of in the same way that Atmos is. It's just a bill that you get taken care of. After that, you have to structure out other savings and intentional spending to where future you is insulated and always taken care of. Like that's the one bill that you always have to be ready to make.
That is so good because, you know, and the idea shifted. My husband and I were just talking about this morning because, you know, we grew up with like, we're excited about the benefits of the healthcare and the 401k plan and all that. That was our future you, right? Growing up, future you. And now because it's just different, you know, a lot of kids these days, they don't, and then we have you know, our kids, they don't think about insurance and that side of benefits as being for their future or being covering them for certain things, unexpected expenses, and they don't think about it. And a lot of times, so many of us now, young kids doing jobs that are like content creators, they're 1099, they're not even thinking about 30 years down the road, what's that going to look like? And how are you going to survive from, I don't know, 60 to 90 or whatever.
Sure.
So I love that you say that. And so is that like a plan? Is that kind of where when you sit down with somebody, you're like, okay, this is what we're doing, right?
And so
Tithing, we're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's
Love it.
I'll say the like actual coaching that comes into it is getting that set up and actually jumping into the mud with someone and being like, all right, we're going to get these things set up. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. The concept of a private pension as opposed to the public ones that are out there. Like entrepreneurs can set up income streams for themselves that accumulate and go and outperform even some of the public pensions that are out there if they are just intentional up front. And so it's like we go through each of these steps and go, okay, what does it actually look like? Something that's a part of my base foundation was life insurance. And people go, that's not the sexiest thing for a financial professional to talk about. But my life insurance, due to its nature, it had access to the death benefit when I got diagnosed for cancer. So that I set up in my 20s, and I thought, I'll never use this policy. That little 20-year-old listening to his mentor at the time paid 33-year-old me that gets diagnosed with cancer dividends because I was able to accelerate my death benefit while I was still alive to pay for chemo and radiation. And that saved our financial life. And so it's things like this that we aren't even thinking about. You talked about insurance earlier. It's phenomenal to know that, self-insurance will be nice, but most people, they just need some type of protection in place as well. And so protecting the money from themselves, protecting the money from all the what ifs. And that's the bulk of the coaching that I've done with clients over the past decade and a half. Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I'm so happy to hear that. And some people, me included, the whole insurance thing was like, oh, it's just a waste of money. I mean, you have this whole idea of yourself younger that nothing's going to happen to me and I don't need it. And how do you, I guess, convince or, coach someone to realize, yes, you're just plugging in this money every month, but you have to be prepared, who's very adamant about like, that's not an expense I want to take on. How do you coach that?
Very gently. 30 hours. It's the why is more important than the what. The life insurance piece, like it's one of the oldest industries in the world. People don't realize that. It's older than America. Some of these some of these companies that are operating in America are older than America. I always talk about a company that's up here in Addison and Montpelier, Vermont. And I'm like, they're kind of a startup in the industry. They've only been around since 1838, and so they're just getting started.
Yeah.
It's like most people buy insurances because they love someone. And a lot of people don't buy insurances because they love money. I'm going to say that again for emphasis. You usually buy insurance because you love someone, but you usually don't buy insurances because you love money. The issue with that is that...
Write that down.
And so, exactly, write that down. So with risk, there's 3 things that you can do. And so you can stick your head in the sand with risks. That's what a lot of people are doing. They're like, I'll never get sick. Whatever. I'm not going to need it. So you can just ignore the risk. The second thing that you can do is self-insure the risk. And that's where the concept of buying a term policy and then one day having enough money to self-insure comes in. Like, hey, if you buy a term, invest the difference, theoretically, you're going to have the money to cover it. And that was a big boon for those with that concept in the 80s and 90s. But the idea is self-insurance is the second thing you do with any risk. And so the risk of a life insurance policy is that if you die. The risk of a auto insurance isn't just the car, it's if you hurt the other person, if you're injured, all these different things, right?
Yeah.
So self-insurance is an option, but it's, sometimes we don't like how much risk that is. And then the third one is just to transfer the risk to an institution. And that's what insurance is. And so by educating people on what it is and what it isn't, they can determine their path. It's like, look, my heart for this policy, it's like, let's say someone bought like a little term policy. I was like, great. My goal is that by the end of this, you have as much money saved as you have as face amount for your death benefit. And we're going to set up a plan to make that happen. It's not going to be easy, but it'd be cool to be able to say, hey, I don't need this, but I want it later, right? Yeah. But if you can't self-insure for the needs, well, then you're going to have to transfer that risk or ignore it. And unfortunately, the people that fight the most against it usually just ignore it. And they go, I'm never going to die. And I'm like, let me tell you my story.
Yeah. And I like that I think I've heard you say, you've said personal, professional, and financial growth are inseparable. So everything you've talked about so far is also, you've always created a personal piece of it or brought in a personal piece of it as well, right?
Absolutely.
Insurance. What did you say? You don't buy insurance. You buy insurance for someone you love.
That's right.
You don't buy insurance. What was the other part?
Well, then that second part is the part that people don't like, which is you don't buy insurance because you love the money more than you love the protection aspect. And so usually the heart of it is that they have some dysregulation with money in general.
Yeah.
And so if you love money more than the person that would benefit from it, well, that's a hard thing too.
Yeah. So what happens when someone tries to fix one without the other?
It always fails. Like, that's the thing that frustrated me the most is I kept asking myself, like, why did people need to pull out of their 401k when they lost their job?
Yeah.
That was a hard question. It's like, why the majority of people, when they move companies, they either leave their 401k where they're at or they cash it out. They don't transfer it to somewhere else. They don't do anything like that. Sometimes they do. It's a really cool thing. If you're listening and you do that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But most people just cash it out and use it for some frivolous expense or some little thing that they've been waiting and they treat themselves.
Yeah.
And so,
and you say, no, don't do that.
Oh, I would say keep it in the system, man. Like, it's not an investment if you're touching it every couple of years. Like, investments are meant to be left alone. Speculations are what we touch daily, weekly, monthly, annually. Like, in general, you should be able to set the money and forget it and just trust the plan and the systems that you have in place. If you don't, obviously you should work with a professional that can help you get peace there. But in general, your personal life always impacts your professional life, impacts your financial life, which impacts your personal life, which impacts. So funny to know that I had a client that I was working with recently. They were going paycheck to paycheck, just a normal W-2 job, nothing fancy.
Most of America.
Most of America. And they have a little candy business on the side they're trying to start up, making candy at the house. It's like, cool. Don't forget to put it online. People love that stuff.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing is that eventually they came to me and they're like, wait, we have more money saved than we've ever had. I was like, yeah. They're like, we're not paycheck to paycheck anymore. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You're not paycheck to paycheck anymore.
I'm sorry. You're not.
I'm like, you're going to have to find something else to complain about. You know, your friends are going to have to hear a different story.
Okay. Love that.
And what that did for them is empowered them to pour more into the candy business, which empowered them to make more money on the side, which made them more fulfilled at even their day job because they're able to do more things. Yeah. And so it's this very vicious cycle where if you're not grateful, so going back to that wealth concept, if you're not grateful and contented with what you have, your job is always going to suck and you're going to hate your life, which makes the money never worth it, which makes your job and your boss even more unbearable, which makes all these different things cascade into effect. Like, the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And so if you can't be contented with your money, it's hard for you to be contented with your spouse either, or your kids, or your dog, or your apartment, or whatever it is. It's so interconnected, you can't take them apart.
JR, I just feel your passion and you're speaking to most of America, you know, in today's culture. And I'm curious to know what you think about this because it's so different, right? In today's culture of like hustle and comparison, how do you help people define when it's enough? Like we talked about that, right? When is it enough? Like, how do you coach that?
That's a great question. There's levels to this thing. And so the idea of future you comes up a lot. When does future you have enough money? Because at first, what ends up happening when we coach is that they'll notice that Bill's bank account starts stacking up and it has more money in it than it usually did. And so we go, okay, well, what are some of our goals? What are we trying to plan for? And so that's a byproduct that happens very early on in coaching where they're like, I have extra money in the system. So the question of what do we do with extra money comes up. A lot of people are trying to get out of debt. So a lot of extra money just goes to preventing future debt, which is called savings, and going to paying off current debts, which is allocating a little bit, whether it be a snowball method, avalanche, DTI. There's a ton of different ways of attacking debt. But the reality is the third piece has to be important, which is living a little bit of lifestyle today. You know, it's like, hey, you're getting $1,000 tax refund. Take half of that, maybe $500, put it in savings. So in the future, if you needed that $500, it's there for you. Take $250, go and attack your smallest debt, whichever one that is. See if you can pay it off with that $250. If you can't, no big deal. At least you've paid it down. And then take $250 and take your wife out to an Airbnb over the weekend and get some life. Get recharged. Enjoy life today.
Yeah.
So that is lifestyle that a lot of people start building up in the back of their minds that they've been missing out on. And if you can give it to them today in small doses, it makes the need to accumulate less because you're able to live today as opposed to living for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can tell you the truth. I almost died in the middle of chemo and radiation. I didn't have, there was a chance that I didn't
There
have.
was no tomorrow. Yeah.
There was no tomorrow. There was only today, and there's only these moments. And when you have that experience, you look around and you go, you know, this may be the last call I ever have. So Lord willing, I serve those who are in front of me. Right.
Yeah.
And so with that mindset, that contentment of the moment and being in the moment, then we get to level one, which is, hey, my money has now accumulated to the point where it can pay me a salary that's covering my bills. And that's an exciting moment. And we celebrate along the way. Ton of little milestones.
Sure.
It's not overnight. It's not get rich quick, like you said at the beginning. It's get rich eventually, which is a fun thing to do as long as you keep your eyes glued in the right places.
Yeah.
And then level two is where your money can, you know, eventually start paying not just your expenses, but your salary. Like you're covered. Now you're working because you want to, not because you have to. And that changes things. Like if you didn't have to work, would you do what you're doing? And that's really fun. A lot of people experience that kind of post-retirement these days, somewhat out of necessity for extra income reasons, but I won't get too much into that. The reality is that level two is going to be
a whole nother podcast.
Exactly, right? So level two can be like, hey, my bills are covered. But then you get to level three. And this is something I structure in everyone's finances, whether they're secular or people of faith. It's like generosity has to be baked in from the beginning as well, which is, well, once you get to a certain point, all your bills are covered, your income's covered. Anything plus that is just, I mean, it's either generosity, legacy, all these things, but eventually even you've already covered your grandchildren to the fourth generation. So what's left to do? You know, Caesar wept for there are no more worlds to conquer, right? It's like you will get to this point. Everyone has that number. You know, I talk about it being somewhere around like 3 million in assets, where just about anyone should be able to stop working if they had 3 million in assets. People with 10 million in assets would be like, oh, it's not enough. Like,
so it's personal. It's personal.
By the way, I'm like, well, that's the thing is that it should be capable. Like, I hate to say it should, right? But you should be able to live on, you know, a $3 million nest egg, assuming a humble return, income generating portfolio.
Yeah.
You'd be able to live on that if you never had to raise a finger ever again. Like that's a pretty exciting potential.
Yeah.
But so many people aren't going to get to 3 million. They're not going to get to even a million. They'll get to a few 100,000 and struggle for the rest of their life. The heart posture is everything in all this.
Yeah. I love that. Well, so I want to transition a little bit because you wrote a book, The Worship of Money. So what prompted you to write this book and what questions were you trying to answer as you wrote it?
When I was originally thinking, I felt called to write a book for a long time. And I don't know if anyone listening's ever been like felt that urge to write, but it's like, it just keeps you up at night sometimes. And I swear I wrote 6 different manuscripts trying to put this book together over, a decade, it felt like. And I'll just get writing. And then it just closed up. And then one day I was driving down to a family reunion with my wife. Our family's down in Waco, Texas. And on the drive, I just heard this voice that said, The Worship of Money. And I was like, that's crazy. I was like, and my wife, very discerning woman, always very quick to make sure if my ideas aren't going to pan out, she'd let me know quickly. And so I was like, babe, I think I got the name of the book. And she goes, okay, hit me with it. And I was ready for the stick, immediately. And I said, The Worship of Money. She goes, ooh, yeah, that's it. That's it.
So that's when you knew.
And so I was like, okay, now I got to get serious about this. And so I started writing mainly with the idea of, first I thought I was going to tell the testimonials of what I'd seen as a financial professional of the different areas of the world that people are just worshiping money and don't realize it.
Yeah.
Worship of money isn't really about money. It's about the things that money lies and says that it'll give us, which is a happy life, a happy family, wealth, or I'll say health, contentment. All these things aren't going to come from getting more money. And so we break that down line by line, situation by situation, and help people realize that you can be broke and worship money. You can be rich and worship money. And it's so convoluted and so different case by case that you almost have to look at it how it applies to you. And so it's phenomenal to know that we are really good at worshiping things that are created as opposed to the creator of the thing. And then, something that touches me is like I was worshiping my business. And so very, very early on, I just realized like I was writing the book mostly to myself and I was hoping others would get something out of it. And
Yeah.
it was a reminder to me and to others that would read it that, hey, it's not the end of the world. If you are, there's a path forward and, there's ways out of it. But
Yeah.
my heart has always been just to pour into others and give them the insight of maybe you're not seeing it from this slightly different view. And now that you can, let's make some changes to make it more healthy relationship.
Yeah. The worship of money. So, JR, who is the book really for? The person drowning financially or the person who looks like they've made it?
Ooh, oh, that's a good question. I've heard feedback from both of those groups recently, and both of
Okay.
them gave me slightly different like takeaways from it. The person who's drowning right now is going to get a lot of hope and confidence and certainty in that they can make change. The person who looks like they've made it is probably going to feel very convicted of like, hey, here's some mistakes I've made. Here's some things that we can change. And
Yeah.
so the book is written twofold to anyone who has like the slightest like check up from the neck up. It's like, should I even look into this? And if you're
Yeah.
feeling completely unconvicted by the name, the worship of money or the image on the front, or you're like, you're not holding tight and squeezing as much control as you can, hey, that's fine. But if you feel like
Yeah.
you could loosen the grip a little bit, the book's written to you. If you feel like you're here's a good question. If you're looking at your banking app more than your Bible app, you might want to read the book.
I love that. Bank account more than your Bible app.
Or your
So
investment
good.
account or your brokerage account or whatever it is. If
Yeah.
you're looking
You're
at all
constantly, yeah.
oh my gosh. And by
I
the
hear
way,
ya.
and some of us that are content creators, it's like if we're on Instagram more than, in our word, it might be an issue.
You just say that and it took me back to, what was it? You might be a redneck. Woohoo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Foxworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean to digress. But I was like, you might have an issue. I was like, you might be
I'm
a redneck.
honored to be compared to Foxworth. That's awesome. Grew up watching it. It's awesome.
I mean, I hope you it's definitely a good thing. Like the
Let's
minute
go.
you said that, he's like branded, right? So if a
Absolutely.
reader, tell me, JR, if a reader only walks away with one mindset shift from the book, what do you hope it is?
It's that everything is his, capital H. Everything is his, and we just get the opportunity to partner with him on that. And the responsibility there is just like overwhelming when you really break it down. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
we're entrusted in this whole thing. Like everything is a resource. And it's like my wife isn't my wife. It's his wife that he's allowed me to steward and be with at this moment. It's not my kid. It's just his that I've been allowed to guide and nurture in these moments, and be as good of a reflection of him as I can. My life is not my own. It could be taken away at a moment's notice, and that it happens.
Yeah.
These are the things that like it's all his. And when we can align ourselves with that, like it's not my business. And so the question, he's the CEO, I'm the COO. So it's like, what would he have me do today that would be good? And it says that in the word that, if he works everything together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
And aligning your business, your finances, your personal, professional, everything to that, life-changing.
Life-changing. What would you say is one small but meaningful step someone can take today or this week? I won't make it so aggressive. Take this week to regain clarity around money.
Ooh, to find a cause that you'd want to give your money to. That's a challenge. Talk about generosity with a lot of my clients, and a bunch of them don't have like nonprofits or anything they support or any real causes that they can believe in. And I believe generosity is a call, to take care of the orphans, the widows, the despondent of the world, those who need. And so the beauty is that when you can focus on giving, if you can refocus, like if you can find something that you'd be willing to give to, it'll plant a seed in your heart that can be watered by others and help you create systems that allow you to do that. And so if you can find something you truly would be willing to lay your own resources, your own time, money, energy into, that's really powerful for this. And people think I'd say like a bank account or an investment.
Yeah.
No, it always starts here.
Yeah. So find a place that you're passionate about to donate to.
Yes.
If someone feels like stuck in a cycle of stress or overthinking about finances, which that's so many of us, where should they start? Not financially, but mentally.
So I'm a big fan of journaling personally. I always have one right beside me. Without a doubt, I have too many of these stacked up on my bookshelf beside me where anything that creates worry, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. For me, I have the system of prayer, fasting, and really big on journaling and reading the Bible, whatever that is. And the idea is that I always want to put the word down and write it down and reflect on it and pray about it. And just some people have like meditation and these different reflective acts, but stress, it's very rarely the thing that happens that's the stressor, like the actual root cause. It's usually something else. And none of us take the time to actually investigate it.
Yeah.
And walking forward in that with humility, where it's like, man, I actually need some help. But it's so hard to admit that these days when everyone tells us we have to be strong, powerful, independent, all these things. And it's like, dude, I couldn't have gotten where I was without doctors, attorneys, lawyers, all these different people that have helped me along the way that are professionals in their craft. Without these people, I literally wouldn't be alive today.
Yeah.
So humbling ourselves and going, like I'd even write down something as simple as this. Who do I need to come across that can help me today or this week?
Yeah, love that. So you mentioned this early on, and I wanted to just touch on it before we wrap up here is a couple of things. One, mentors. You've mentioned mentors multiple times. What types of mentors? How did you find mentors? Did you seek them out? Were they just put in your path by God? Like, how did that evolve?
The shortest answer is yes, but the reality is that I don't know if y'all go through this, but it's been so hard sometimes to find a mentor, because I believe a mentor, there's a couple different kinds. There's the ones that there's the one that you pay, and these are usually professionals that are coaches. And so a mentor isn't a coach. Sometimes they can be, but a mentor needs to be someone who's willing to pour into you, even if they get nothing out of it themselves.
Yeah.
And finding someone who's willing to do that is like dating. It's sometimes harder than dating.
It is.
That's the craziest thing, is that this is someone that's willing to jump in the mud with you and answer the hard questions. And the cool thing about the world as it is that there's no shortage of people who could be mentors indirectly. Some I would call Jim Rohn or like David Goggins or some of these people I've never even met, like mentors, but they aren't nearly as important as some of the guys, like I'll say Michael or John. They know who I'm talking about. These mentors were in it with me. And even if I never saw success, they were there to answer the questions when I needed them.
So
with
good.
no strings attached. Just, hey, based on where I am, there it is. We talked about putting your path by God. I'm like, I believe that happens very, 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 very frequently, whether we can accept it or not.
Yeah.
It says in the word that success in battle comes from a multitude of advisors. And so the reality of that is that we need advisors. We need multiple, whether you are a solopreneur or you're running a Fortune 500 company, you need people that can hold you accountable, that you actually care about their influence. And so finding these people isn't easy, but it's worth it. And so listening to podcasts like this can help. Indirect mentorship. But there's something to be said about direct mentorship.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said, how you just put it, because it's so true. I think people desire that. They want that. I know I was one for sure. But, every time you turned around, it was thousands of dollars for someone to do this for you. You don't find the person that just really wants to get, like you said, get in the mud with you and not have any expectation of a return, And that to me is huge. And I hope people are out there. I am definitely a person who would do that for anybody, because I feel like it's so hard to find that,
Sure.
but that's that trust thing. Just before I have all these questions. So you went through a life-changing, altering, who knows if I'm ever going to see tomorrow event in your life. And, many people do go through this type of event, but many people do not experience it. When you went through that event, came out on the other side, just so blessed and obviously grateful to be here. What changed? What changed the most for you about money, about life, personal purpose, all of that?
That's a great question. Yeah, the day after, when I wake up and the doctors tell me, no, you're going to be fine. The chemo didn't burn a hole in your heart. You just went into shock when you got a blood draw. But, they called in my mom, my wife. Yeah, you got to come. There is a lot of energy. That was intense. I wake up the next day and I realize something. It's that I could have disappeared and nothing. Like, I go, what impact did I make? My voice could have been snuffed out last night. It could have been gone. And so I go, okay, I need to do something. If I want to make an impact, I should probably make an impact. Ironic, right? The second thing I did is it's like, in that moment, I realized that all the money I'd made up to that point was all the money I was going to make potentially. And so more didn't matter. That was so freeing because it made it to where when I was talking to a client, more money didn't matter. All that mattered was serving them and the legacy of what this relationship would do. And so more didn't matter. But one thing I did know is that I wanted to help people, and every day was a gift. It says, tomorrow's a mystery, yesterday's history, but today is a gift. That's why they call it present, right?
Yeah.
And so today is very much a present, but too many of us aren't present to the present. And so it's like, when's the last time you literally just sat and was completely calm, didn't have the phone buzzing, didn't have the Insta reel going, didn't have any brain rot, just literally sat there and saw your spouse, like truly saw them and was there with them. And they could ask you anything and you could be together properly. And same for them though. You're there, but they're there too. And then you start realizing how many people you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis that are not here. They're not really here. They're living in the future, which is anxiety. They're living in the past, which is depression. They're living somewhere in between those two spaces, but never here. And that is the driving force that I think we should fight against and say, hey, I see you. I'm here with you. Let's be together in this moment, no matter what happens next. The call can wait. You'll call back the client. If the client was so lit that you can't call him back, well, then you don't need him as a client. Like literally let it go. And that's something that I fight for daily, that surrender to the moment, to this is all I get.
JR, such powerful and purposeful words. Thank you so much for sharing that moment with us. Now, where can we find your book?
Amazon has it. So you search j.j.r.wheeler and I should pop up with the Worship of Money on there. You can also go to jjrwheeler.com, which is, it'll have the book available there. It'll have a link to the Amazon. And then I think rumor has it, and I think I could tell you this on this call, I think the wife is selling my like if you want a signed copy, I think I'm doing that apparently, which is really cool. So off to jjrwheeler.com, Amazon, or jjrwheeler.com.
Okay, so website or Amazon, JR. Gosh, you have challenged us to slow down, examine what we're chasing, and ask whether our financial decisions actually align with the life we really want to live, right? Or are we just pretending? So thank you so much for today. Thank you for your honesty, your perspective. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It has just been so powerful. And I think the work you're doing for people to bring clarity where there's often so much confusion is just awesome. If this episode made you pause, and I hope it did, I hope it made you reflect or rethink your relationship with money and your people. It's not an accident. Stop for just a moment and be present, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Every week we come here and open the drawer. You already know what's inside. You always have. And if this conversation challenged you in a good way, and you think it will help challenge someone else who needs it, send it to them, because that's how we pay it forward together. Subscribe and follow so you never miss what's coming next. And find us at thesockdrawerpodcast.com.